Everything in this universe is a vibration as there is movement. To understand this, we have to clarify the concept of spanda, which is movement, and nada. Spanda is the basic core movement, a vibration, and that vibration emanates a sound. Minute you see a flutter of a vibrational unit, there is a sound which emerges from that sound. That very sound either is audible or inaudible to the human ears. Human ears are probably one of those weakest receptive tools because we are not able to grasp the frequencies on the high scale or on the low scale, unlike whales, unlike those creatures which are meant to receive from a distance. So what we are going to discuss today is ways that sound can be improvised in our instrument by higher clarity, by fine-tuning our instrument, our calibration of this instrument. Before we go to that, we understand what is sound. The very universe is a sound. Everything is in motion. The whole earth is spinning around us. The cosmos is spinning around. There are stars, there are different celestial objects, asteroids, there are different universes, galactical celestial objects moving around. So the very sound of the universe itself is a drone, which we sometimes cannot grasp it until we fine tune. The first sign to know that we are closer to the universal awareness is to grasp that sound, which is audible to a yogi in meditative awareness, the very sound of the universe in a constant spin. So we are interested in knowing more about what sound can do to us, and if the already sound exists, why are you not able to grasp it? So we will go in this beautiful session understand what it means to absorb, calibrate and use sound as a means to improvise our ability to entrain the brain and also move into higher awareness.
How does sound heal?
We are often wondering how sound heals. To understand that, we have to go back to the core design. How was this instrument designed? This instrument was designed by music and sound. In the higher planes, the higher beings used music, singing, dancing to create a frequency shifts from the cellular structure and enabled a mutation of this to form, and then eventually the design of this instrument was conceived. So if you understand that this whole instrument was conceived through sound, then there is no other way but to return back to sound as a means of recalibrating back to its origin, to its design, to its connection. So sound is invariably the important aspect of our reconnective, because the cells have memories right from its origin, from where it was generated, and these memories return it back into a point where it can liberate itself from a very limited memory, fragmented memory, and return back to origin, and that itself is healing.
What are healing frequencies doing to shift the crystalline structure?
If you look at this instrument, what is this instrument doing? Each and every cell has a certain memory. We have 150 trillion cells in this instrument. If all these 150 trillion cells are already operating on an intelligence which is inherent to it, and that study of it is called epigenetics. They have intelligence, they have a certain decentralized way of operating. So what are healing frequencies then? So if all of these atoms can talk to each other and they can come together as one unit or one pillar of light, then that is called a synchronization or a union process, a nuclear fusion process. That is a heightened state of what called as sound health. One sound. If you watch an army walking past you, you will not hear a battalion of 140 soldiers in different steps. You will hear one sound. And that one sound is actually a very beautifully synchronized event of 140 soldiers tuned in to the rhythmic consonance, consistency of that sound, and that's when you hear just a beautiful tuck, 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 just a very clear synchronized way. Same way our body is synchronized inside. To this very heartbeat of the mother, this child gets used to the sound. The child rhythm is formed by the heartbeat of the mother. The child has grown up listening to sound of the mother's heartbeat, and that's how there is a rhythmic sense inside us. There is a connection to the heartbeat. There is connection. If we can hear your heartbeat, for it's the first encounter with sound, long before we have heard any other external ambient sound. So we have to tune in further to understand that what sound can do to us, how calibration can happen to us, how we can resonate with the pure vibrational shift. One is an ambient sound, then there is inherent anahata nada, which is very pure, clear sound that is emerging without a need for a striking sound. And that unstruck sound is called anahata nada. So we are going deeper and deeper into understanding from externalization of sound, absorbing of sound, and the internalization of that sound. So sound in various stages is very intensely healing. So we have to discover how each one of us are calibrated to a certain kind of sound. What is our culture, environment, exposure, entrainment, education, everything has related to sound. We have grown up with sound. Certain sounds are up to our liking, certain sounds are not to our liking. So what happens in a very cultured environment where we are training the brain to accept a sound which is pleasing to the ear, pleasing to the vibrational state that we are operating in. So using a crystal bowl, using a healing bowl is actually enabling us to settle down from a distorted state, a dissonant state, into a calibrative state where we can allow ourselves to receive, allow ourselves to tune in, fine tune, first tune in, then fine tune and calibrate this instrument to actually resonate with the actual frequency that was meant to shape us, give us a sense of direction. So a healer would use a clear directive ushering us into the point where it can enable all the sound inside us as vibrational shift can happen and allow us to come together as one single unit, and that's when the healing happens. Healing is actually a process of coming together to move from scattered state to a state of union.
How can we best absorb the sound?
Most of us are already having a private, individuated, subscribed radio channel in our head. We have a distorted radio channel, it's already operating in our head. We think we are listening, we are not listening. Most of us are only hearing. Eventually, the sound in our head is based on what we already are. The mental makeup, that means the thoughts that run in our head, the kind of voices we are used to, the kind of sounds that we are used to, the kind of perception we are already tuned into, already make a projected state that we are already in. So each one operates in a different reality. It is not possible to say this one sound is going to heal everybody in one shot. What is that is we are trying to understand is how to bring a certain level of shift in us by allowing us to shift from an ordinary state to a fine-tuned, absorbed awareness. How sound can heal is a very interesting topic in itself. How to tune in the instrument, that's a different topic in altogether. So we are here, look at this instrument. We think our ears are actually listening. The ears are not listening. The ears are only the device that allow the sound to vibrate in our brain. So the auditory cortex in the brain is actually absorbing the sound, reflecting the sound, and if it does not make sense to the brain, which is again trained to listen to sounds. We are actually training right from the birth when the mother talks to the child, wants to make sense to the child by its different sounds, introducing the child to sounds, to voices, to music, to frequencies. So eventually we are actually trained to listen. Most of us only hear. To move from hearing to listening to active listening. Active listening is ability to respond to the sound. How do we respond to the sound? Most often in a healing sessions that I have seen, most of us lie down and go to sleep. Because sleep is the most easiest escape route. We often get into restive awareness. For a few seconds we think we are listening. It puts us into a very drowsy state, alpha state, and the chin drops. If you notice, our head alignment is crucial part of listening process. Minute the head drops, the chin drops, you can take for granted that you would enter into a sleep scenario, because you lost that ability to fine tune the awareness of listening actively. Most of us are not listening actively. We often become victims of a very simple, practiced way of collapsing into sleep. So that is what is the essence of our session today, is how to remain awake, alert, aware, alive in a healing encounter by opening the gateways to listening and absorbing.
How do we move from ordinary states of perception to reception?
If you understand, we are all perceiving more than receiving. For instance, if you hear the Omkara Nath, the original sound, it has been interpreted in millions of ways by millions of people. Each culture, each Om became Amen, Amin, according to culture, that is perception. How did Om become Amen is again the simple example to show that how cultures can claim that they are able to take the same original sound and color it. Same way, we have also tremendous coloring mechanism inside us, perceptions inside us. This is based on our preset, preconditioned understanding of life. So we are actually, look at this. What happens? The sound is everywhere, 360 degrees around us. The sound of the birds, the crickets, the cicadas, everything in the whole nature, universe is talking to us through sound. The sound of the breeze on us, the whiff of wind on us, everything is sound. So how are we going to shape this to ability to move from perception to reception? What if we are so occupied in our thinking process, we are not receiving? For receptive states to happen, we have to be in a thoughtless awareness. So the ability to prepare our instrument is to actually come to a state of zero field awareness. Reception is possible in only zero field awareness.
How to enhance purity in reception?
This instrument is a fabulous design, beautiful design. It has been conceived with highest detailing. If we get aware of that powerful possibility of this instrument, we would not ever spend a single moment wasteful in keeping these perceptions on. For instance, look at it. We have sensory instruments. Our eyes are grasping, but we are perceiving light, reflected light only. The sound is also light. If we can actually see sound as light, that means we can hear light and see sound. That is a state of receptivity, fine-tuned receptivity. I'll give an example to you. I'm sitting in my drawing room and the doorbell rings. I can actually see this light from the doorbell coming to in the form of a beautiful blue-colored mandala and emerging and settling down into my heart. Then I hear the doorbell ring. What does that imply? That means it's very clear that sound is light, but we are not able to receive it. So all we hear is only the sound of the doorbell ringing. So it is possible that we can actually hear light and see sound. So light and sound are so closely interconnected. It's called transmutation. Each sound becomes light, light becomes sound, in terms of the way sound travels slightly in a delay compared to the speed of light. So you can see the light coming first. That's why I could see first the light beam hitting me in my heart and then the sound of the doorbell. So this is a very simple example of how sound and light are so deeply connected, and we need to receive it as is.
How to differentiate between resonance, consonance and dissonance?
If you look at a sine wave, you will see the wave operating as there are highs, there are lows. That is how a sine wave operates. This is resonance. If there is a note which is consistent, like a note like now that note has a consistency, and if that consistency persists long enough, it creates like a stream of light passing through you and emerging out of here. Imagine you have a hole in your head, and if there is a light passing through you, the sound passing through you and passing through, that is consonance. Resonance is vibrational shift happening in your brain. And if that vibrational shift is distortion to you, it's dissonance. If you're not in sync, if you hear a scraping metal sound, the very sound of it is hurtful to the very instrument itself. That is dissonance. It is not pleasant. So if you go understand what are ragas, ragas are sounds, notes which are very pleasant to the ear, very passionate, melodious, which enable the pleasure centers in the brain to activate. So that's how music has been scaled.
How to be awake, aware, alive in a sound healing session?
Very interesting aspect of our journey is most of us think we are awake. It may seem very obvious. If the eyes are open, we think we are awake. Most of the time we are daydreaming. We have parallel realities. Eyes are open, but we are residing in another reality, another frequency. There is a constant internal chatter happening. So most of us don't calibrate our instrument enough because we don't know anything better. We are not trained enough to listen. Most of us go to gatherings, communities, we sit down and think that we are actually listening. We are not listening. We are already ready, preparing to answer something. Most of us are forgotten the art of grasping, absorbing. Since we have lost the art, Shravana, which is to listen, once that happens, once you absorb from the instrument, it plays inside a cortex as manana. If you like what you hear, it internalizes as manana, and if you remember it, it becomes smarana, which is memory of it, and then it resides in the heart long enough, it becomes grahana. So Shravana, Manana, Smarana into the internal core, if the amygdala is open to receive, it becomes an emotional memory and it settles down in the hippocampus of the brain, and you can actually start internalizing it. And once it is internalized in the heart, it is grasped, you will not forget it. So how to be alert to that sound? Most of us only hear, we don't absorb. So the process of Kriya Yoga, which is the purification process, is to enable this instrument to remain in active listening mode, absorbing mode, internalizing mode. It's a process of a deep calibration which continues. We start habituating the process. We are practicing how to be aware. Awareness is not a small little encounter and it then goes back into usual slipstreams. So to remain in the mainstream, to be able to absorb fully, record fully, internalize, recall and clarify so that it can be retrieved at the point of need of an information. So how do we know if we are alert? How do we know if we are alive? How do you know if you are awake and fully able to be aware at the point of need? So all these are integrated part of meditative awareness. So meditation, contemplation and deep ability to remain undisturbed by the proceedings beyond your capacity of listening. So most often we are far off we live in another world. We are not actually present here in the moment. So the art of being alert, aware, awake, aware is that being in the moment, present fully, without internal chatter, without thinking processes, without trying to attain a logical understanding of what's happening. The minute we try to logically perceive what's happening, we are again into thinking process. So to diffuse all this and just remain like a beautiful, powerful recording machine, absorbing machine, like a sponge, we absorb it fully, and the effect of it is instantaneous. As a stimulus, there's a stimulus of the brain, and the brain starts to flower and blossom like a beautiful lotus. Everything just shifts. The whole brain becomes a mechanism of absorbing the sound, and it is reflected. There's nucleus accumbens, and then there is auditory cortex, then there is an occipital area. Each one of them are calibrated for a certain activity. The whole brain has been prepared to receive. We already had the right factory setting, preconditioned setting to move from ordinary state to a heightened state of absorption. So we already have it inside us. It was not something which we have to reinvent. It is already a powerful preset factory that we have inside us. It is all needs to be realigned through meditative awareness, and then all of it comes alive.
How are some specific methods that we can prepare ourselves to receive the sound?
Yes, very specific methods. Number one, the first aspect of it is the ear itself. Most of us are very dormant in our ears. You see, notice that the ear pulling is a very, very simple and powerful way of igniting if the ears are not tuned in, you can actually hear sometimes a Brownian movement, just like a pass of a drone information inside the ear and gone. Sometimes we have like a tinnitus, which is like a ringing in the ear. So most of us have not fine-tuned the ear itself. These devices have to be tuned in to actually hear silence, tune in to actually make out the difference between shifting from silence to a state of the very core vibration. There is a core vibration happening. A brilliant musician has designed a music, a piece or a sound for enabling the ear to shift to a heightened state and then move back into a very soft, settled down state. So what we need to do is, see, if you look at this is something called as tragus, this particular cartilage known as tragus. What we do is put our fingers into it and actually move our entire thumb inside the ear while the sound is on, and this is like a head cleanser. This moving the fingers inside the ear and then tuning in this space and putting the tongue on top of this is called the Lamina Chakra. On the roof of the mouth is a soft, moist area. You put your tongue on there and fine tune this instrument to actually, once this does, to a point where you can actually start to feel the sound is now mixing with internal sound and external sound, and eventually you can hear more clearly after a few moments. When you drop your finger, something clears. You feel as if you use a vacuum pump to cleanse your ears. It's a frequency shift. It's a very simple and effective method to fine-tune the hearing process. Okay, and then to absorb the listening process. This is only hearing process. Please remember, this is only hearing process. The listening is here and at the back of the head. I was training with a brilliant master in China, and they said that every time you want to listen carefully, you had to tap at the drum at the back of the head like this. Before we started doing any martial arts sessions, we had to drum at the back of our head so that we could listen carefully. The occipital area of the brain. This is the occipital area of the brain, and this had to be fine-tuned before a session. So it would not be a random session, it would be a fine-tuned listening session. Imagine that you have to just listen to a teacher. There was nothing else but to the voice of the teacher. So tuning in the brain, just at the, you can put both hands at the back of the head like this and also do the fine-tuning of the drum. You can actually hear a drum at the back of your head. This drumming at the back of the head is very crucial part of listening. So, and also the hooked fingers like this, okay, this here hooked finger, and what we do is you fine tune the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex is vital part of the hearing. You'll be surprised how. The how is answered by simple understanding. The prefrontal cortex is our ego individuated process. Most of us are very lost in our inner world. Once this settles down, we are able to become more in the moment. The prefrontal cortex, this also could be fine-tuned by moving the amygdala here, the connection to the amygdala, by tuning in deeper, 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 deeper. What happens is we allow this to become more fine-tuned, calibrated. When we do this, there is a sense of vibrational shift which comes in the center of the brain. The whole brain moves from prefrontal cortex activation to midbrain. Actual, real process of listening is possible when you are in the midbrain. When you are collapsed into the center of the brain, the whole brain actually can feel the activity, sense the activity happening, all the shifts of the sound making difference to the nuclear state of us, to the neuron state of us. The whole brain is buzzing. If you're actually in a beautiful sound healing session, you can feel the sparks of the neuron activity. Neurons firing, it's called the neuron firing activity, which is basically allowing most of us use only a small part of the brain. A sound healing session is immersive and wholesome. It awakens the brain to activate as wholesome activity, whole brain activity. That's why different sounds are important. The bass frequencies, the high frequencies, the mid frequencies, the shock wave. Not just a simple routine stayed frequencies. We introduce a shock sound to awaken the brain from moving into sleep state into an awake state. So the whole process of awakening the brain is by fully being alert to what's already happening inside. Most of us are outside. We need to move from externalization to internalization. And for that to happen, for instance, the fingers on top of the head, with all the gateways right in the top of the head, the soft part, which is the anterior fontanelle. The anterior fontanelle, very clear, and when this anterior fontanelle is pressed in, and you can actually feel a vibrational field of awareness. And also on top of the head, if you can place your hand on top of your head like this, like a cap. Some people often sit with a pyramid on, like a paper pyramid on top of the head to bring the energy frequencies. So what we can do is allow the frequencies to tune into the center of the brain. Tune into the center of the brain. So preparation at the back, occipital area, to ensure higher listening, hearing, tuning into the center of the brain to move from thinking processes to feeling, and then being in the center of the brain to absorb what's happening around you. So these are very basic methods of tuning into the sound frequency shifts.